suppose it's as good a time to start. I'm under a lot of pressure to be half as fun as Gaurav Gupta and Rahul Mishra. I promise I'll try, but I can't promise I will succeed. I've just launched a book last week called Journey to India Modern, which I'm going to show some slides of and how I look at India and where we are today in a slightly different view that many people, and anyway, we can't generalize about India because India, I mean, I quote him later, V.S. Naipaul called it 1 million mutinies now. Now we are 1.4 billion mutinies now. How do you generalize that? You can't. It's like the whole of Europe in one swoop, country and more. Everyone thinks of India as color, as embroidery, Maharajas, and more. All of this, but I think of it as drape. I think of it as the draped form because 200 years back, if I came out of a parachute and landed, I would know, even if everybody wore ecru or white, which part of the country I was in by the way people draped fabric on their body. Both men and women draped pieces of textiles in the most incredible way. And it went from turbans to dhotis to the sari, to multiple variants of the sari, different lengths of the sari. And some of it continues today, but it's obviously not as convenient in today's lifestyle, and we've switched very fast after being colonized in the last 2-3 decades, particularly into Western clothing, because our lifestyles have become like the West. It's probably not as easy to jump on a local train in a sari and go downtown and work and come back. I get it. Everyone is not a Maharani. She's glaring at me. So I'm just going to, how do we start this, please? Oh, okay, great. Okay, sorry. So we're going to start by showing you some paintings and portraits of old India that go from tribal. This is somewhere in probably Maharashtra, you know, you can see the women are wearing the 9-yard sari here, what we call the Nawar. It's not. And these are old paintings. Just to bring some context, Ravi Verma was the first Indian painter, Raja Ravi Verma, who actually painted in the realistic style that you all had in Europe, and which is why 500 years or more of documentation has happened in Europe. In India, we had more miniature stylized painting. It's only when Ravi Verma came on the scene that we had this. And similarly here, these are scenes from South India, the Noch girls, you know, the big pants. Indian hips are very beautiful and big. I don't know, when everyone's trying to squeeze them into Western dresses. And, you know, the sari and the drape actually work beautiful on the curved body. I mean, it was made for a different time. These are paintings from Amrita Shergill, who's one of our foremost Indian painters who died very young, who was half Hungarian, probably in the 20s or 30s. And obviously, this is not fancy or royal. This is people on the street that she painted. Again, as you can see, the turbans, the shawls, the dupattas, all draped. In fact, women in Kutch still tie a drawstring and will tuck 20 meters of fabric in every day, and that's their dress. Coming forward, tailoring came into India with the British. I mean, till that time, there was very basic things, and we wore things on a drawstring. So you and me could share the same pajama, in spite of our different girth. Again, a lot of draping. This is rural India, but you can start to see probably with missionaries, with the first people from the East India Company, that some kind of structured clothing is now coming into the country. It's interesting to note that Hindus did textiles. We wove beautiful textiles. And embroidery, as we know it today, came with Islam. It wasn't such a Hindu thing. The Indians wore beautiful textiles, and then, of course, with the Mughals being in power for so long, and certainly post-independence, there's a wonderful meshing of things. So when we go to work to design, we're not thinking, is this Hindu? We're just doing it, and everything now is getting reintegrated and reborn in a new way. Okay, thank you. So these, again, are different ways of a sari being draped. Sorry, I went too fast. This is images of tribal India, and this is how men still, I just saw somebody magnificent Mehroli driving here, who had the turban. This is the kedu. They're typically shepherds in Gujarat and the big dhotis. You still see some of this, but it's now dying. It's only on older men. Then the next big thing that everybody knows and associates India is the costumes of Royal India that happened in the last 150 years, I'd say, when India settled down. India was being primarily ruled by the British, and there was a great luxury that came in. Indians have loved luxury. The British came here because Indians loved luxury, and we were at the helm of it. So these are some beautiful images where now you can see it's getting much richer, the jewels have come out. The style remains the same, but it's very extravagant, it's very imperial. That's a Nepalese princess in the corner. Here again, Ravi Verma's. These are some older things that were shot for the Ritu Kumar book. And it's a mix. This is how Hindi cinema interprets it, which is much later. And of course, Maharani Gayatri Devi, who was one of the first few Maharanis to come out of Parda and discovered chiffon. So the trend of wearing chiffon, which the Rajwada women do, which is very beautiful, started by some of these Maharanis and now has become a huge trend in India. So it was a big thing to get French chiffon and wear it. So you see the cross-pollination beginning to happen. And again, these are scenes from colonial India, probably some tea party or high fate. And the westernization is coming in, although the women stayed Indian for much longer than the men. Because the men went out. My grandfather spoke English, he wore Western clothes. My grandmother spoke no English and was entirely Indian. So we all sort of grew up in this schizophrenic India where there was one world inside the house and one world outside. When we come to India post-independence, after the British have been successfully asked or made to leave, we were in a very different phase. When the British came to India, we were 25% of the world's GNP or GDP, and when they left, we were 3%. So we were emasculated in many ways. And it was led, as you'll know, by Mahatma Gandhi, who basically got Indians to stop patronizing British-made goods and he did this very simple idea of homespun khadi to be self-reliant. Because what they were doing is taking all the cotton abroad, manufacturing it in Manchester, bringing it back. So basically emasculating local industry and dumping machine-made goods back in India. And his whole premise was that you don't wear that. And so this is a very famous march called the Dandi March, where he's walking to the coast being beaten up, because Indians were not even allowed to mine their own salt. And so it's now entered a period of great austerity, very simple. India had major problems. We needed to go into the whole movement for, social reform. We were only 350 million people, but incredible poverty. And so this was very much the flavor at the moment. So you see, countries go through these seismic changes. It's not that anything that happened before was bad, but sometimes they're made to look bad to kind of keep public opinion. And that's Gandhi. This is much later, Indira Gandhi, who was our prime minister, and her son. Again, very fashionable to be handloom, simple, to wear things that came out of local craft. And suddenly, in the late 80s or early 90s, India begins to change because Rajiv Gandhi, her son, starts to open it up. Televisions come in, color television. For the first time, you could watch foreign serials. Magazines began to be allowed. We grew up in quite an isolated country, and I look back and think it was the need of the day. I think it's what India needed at that time. In 1987, by chance really, I don't take much credit for it, I opened with my wife and with Rohit Khosa, who was a designer who just moved back, India's first multi-brand designer store called Assam. And we'd always see the most beautiful things made abroad that you couldn't find in India. And Indians shopped in these little fashion streets where the export rejects went, or they didn't show this in India as well. And so this store was born to promote Indian design in tailored clothing, not textile, because we've been a huge textile industry till this point. Do it in an international way, give people the luxury of seeing things and to see the craft. And we said to people, why 40 years after independence are we still sending the best product abroad? And we Indians only sell to ourselves rejects. We need to start doing the best things here if you want this country to change. You must understand, we had been decimated There was a smaller Bollywood that was very pure and actually in many ways very beautiful compared to, all the influences and brands that affect what they do today. And so we launched this. It became a big thing. And while it stayed very small in itself, it sparked off. It again another moment. It sparked off thousands of boutiques. It was something that was bubbling and just needed to be given a voice. So every city had the boutiques. Every city had the filtered down versions. Tailors would put the clothes up on the wall, the photographs, and start making copies of them. And that's wonderful because it was a way to disseminate this new way. We didn't know tailoring till this point. It's something that had to be learned. The government of India then set up NIFT in collaboration with FIT. Till this point, a boy could not study design or fashion. Girls were taught this in polytechniques. I think more to be better housewives, to know how to darn something, because it was a textile industry. We come to now my first collection in Milan to show you, to go back to what I said about drape and using ideas of India. These are, I'm sure everyone's familiar, these are the great stylized miniature paintings, which is very much in, opposition to the way Ravi Verma painted, which was the European technique of painting in a photographic form. And so we took them, and we were starting by this point to get more comfortable with shape. So with the jewel T-shirts, which went worldwide, taking something, using tribal India, but in a modern way. These are actual anklets that were been worn in Kutch, using the jewels of the Maharajas. That's one of the famous Nizam's necklaces on a T-shirt with Swarovski, using portraits, a kind of a cool India modern hip way, and so forth. Another collection we did much later because we had to wait to learn it. I've been obsessed with the draped form and the structured drape. As people stopped draping fabric on themselves and were not comfortable, I thought, are we going to lose this forever? Well, we have to get drapers in from Italy, and they came from the UK, and Indian students trained and went to Central St. Martin's and came back. How do we structure the drape so we can keep this aesthetic identity, which I find so beautiful? And so these are actual photographs shot by Rohit Chawla in Kutch before we did the collection. I mean, look how cool he is even today with that shirt and the draped sarong and the silver belt on it. And out of that came fabrics that we did over there. Malka was the new fabric, which is a mix of khadi and one other fine cotton. And that's bandhani. These are techniques from Kutch. And so we started to interpret them in a modern way. And the Kumbh, as you all know, is the giantest place to look at draping. It's, I don't even know how to describe it. It's a festival where every sadhu, every brand, a lot of Indians go to purify themselves. It lasts a month. There are 3 million people who come there. Harvard is doing studies on how do Indians organize it. And most of the people who come have come with no money. They're draped, the sadhus. These are the sadhus, the holy men. And they wear a lot of orange, red, they wear rudraksh beads, they have ash, and the level of creativity. I mean, when I went 11 years back, John Galliano was still at Dion. I thought, my God, I could almost be, if he came here at a show of John's. And so we started to use this as a reference and do draped things in Jersey and take the cashmere and, just use it in front. Using different Indian techniques or jerseys, or that's ajrak with a corset. And so that's how that developed. And finally, what we all do, which is based to some degree of costumes of Royal India, but now has found itself many different ways and lives, and is interpreted by different designers differently. So somebody like Gaurav Gupta does beautiful drape, Rahul Mishra, who you all have just heard, does wonderful embroideries and mixes shape. There are people who do pure embroidery. And so these, again, using the draped idea, are some of the pieces done in very fine handwork that, we've done in the couture. And this part of India is currently exploding. I mean, I don't even know how the studios are going to cope. We'll come to that later. And these were things we did during the pandemic. So now the drape is coming in here as well. It's difficult to do drape with a lot of embroidery. Because we came just from an unstructured fabric background, We're now learning as Indians how to combine all these techniques that are available to us. In the process, the studios have started using old paintings, carpets, it gets done onto a kaftan because you can print. It ended up in a carpet collection, using chicken curry, painting, drape, and so on and so forth. Everything's now beginning to integrate, and this is therefore the very exciting time because it's creating a whole new way that I think has never existed in India, that uses craft, that uses the incredible handwork, the patience, our own ideology and design, but in a more monochromatic, urban way. Because we're not living in some, I keep telling people, we're not in some village and some palace. Get with it. You want to wear sledders, you want to dance? Well, you can't do it in a 30-kilo dress. You're going to die. And take it off at 10 o'clock and put on flip-flops. I've seen that a million times. Desperate on what to do with all our top craftsmen, we started doing wall hanging. So these are the traditional Indian paintings. But we started doing embroidered versions just to keep people going with all that's done in mother of pearl. And so, it's now developed into a whole division that goes into dining room walls and so on and so forth, and embroidered walls in our stores. That's basically what I wanted to quickly show you. The great Indian wedding is out of control. It's out of control. I've never seen anything like it. You often return almost in a coma. They have to now keep ambulances, should be mandatory. Indians party so hard. But it's got a little smaller, but very high quality, and that's what really fuels the luxury. Because we might dress down, you sweat, you have to wash your clothes every day. It's not like being in the West. But at that wedding, there's no holds barred. And it's beautiful clothes, beautiful jewelry. The best. Indians are very generous. It's to the point of exhaustion. How do you process 300 dishes, even at a buffet? It's not possible. But anyway, these are some of the things that, we've also designed for people. These are full structures. They're fully embroidered, the carpets, the full canopies hand embroidered. And so this was at the beautiful Umaid Bhavan Palace. So we're going backwards. We're taking from our past, but it's all in a modern, cool way. And I think finally India has arrived at that. This is where all our work gets done. So in conclusion, what I would just like to say is that, of course, we all know that India is on a major ascent economically. It's a confidence that's come into Indians. Indians are global players. They're heading tech companies. But we also have many beautiful soft sides to us. I said that when the British came, we were 25% of the GDP of the world. We were 3% when they left. Now they're back. Indians are back building economies, businesses, tech, cultural outposts at another level. Couture is a word that's very loosely used in India because actually you can go to any tailor and they'll make anything for you, and they can do it by hand if you wish. Almost anything can be customized. If you have 1.4 billion people, there are many who don't have anything to do, so they will customize it for you. We Indians need to be the custodians of what we have, value and honor it, not to be carried away, as I sometimes fear is happening, in the pursuit of growth. Computer-made clothes are being sold as couture, clothes are being loaned as, a recent controversy and put back on the racks. You don't do this. But we don't have a committee of luxury who modulates or controls or, what you'll have in France, even the committee for the haute couture. So there are no rules, and as you can see from our driving, we kind of like to be lawless. So that's happening everywhere and in everything. At any cost for growth, to celebrate, we need to celebrate hand. Luxury is about hand. Couture is about hand. And when you have 1.4 billion people, we need to do more hand. Otherwise, those hands are not going to be feeding their mouths. It's an imperative, whether we acknowledge it or not. And of course, if you want to grow 500% a year, it's not the easiest thing to do because you have to bring people back in and train them. A lot of skills were lost. First, during socialism, and more recently through the pandemic, because people were scared, they ran helter-skelter, and now they think it's okay, I'd stand and run a fruit stall. And I must congratulate Dior for putting the Chanakya school out there in the way they did, and showing people, because the cameras went in there, how embroiderers here should be treated. They don't have to be French. The working conditions, It's fantastic, and that's how they produce this work. And I think that's a very big lesson for all of us. So all I have to say in conclusion, that luxury, unfortunately, because we are, in a way, because of the money, a nouveau country, again, even though we're an old culture, it's not a logo. It's not what you show on Instagram. It's certainly not what a movie star wore. I mean, good for them. They're borrowing clothes. What are you going to buy, right? Luxury is the experience on your skin. And it's about you. It's not about these other things. We come from the land of superlux, and we have to honor it. There's no one better than us to do it. We have the manpower, and frankly, it's a need for us to do today. Thank you.